This is just an incredible honor for me to sit across from you with a bottle of wine, some nice cheese, and just chat a little bit about the history of American wine. It started with Thomas Jefferson.
Thank you, Tessie. It's an honor to be here and a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about what got you into this writing and what drew you into this historical perspective.
Well, I had come to Charlottesville in 1989 to get a master's degree in history, and at the time was becoming interested in the growing Virginia wine scene. And after I got my master's, I came back to Charlottesville and decided to start writing about the new evolving winery scene. And the first article I did for the Charlottesville Business Journal was on Horton Vineyards, and this was in 93, and it was on his Viognier, because he was the first one to introduce Viognier to Virginia. And not only that, but he took it to a Rhone Rangers meeting in California where Dick Arrowood told them, Dennis, I think you've cleaned our clock with this wine. And it became the most award-winning Viognier in North America. And that put Virginia on the map for making the European style wines. So a lot of people didn't know what we'd done with Cabernet Chardonnay, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, but the Viognier, it's like a white version of Pinot Noir. It's very difficult to make.
Yes.
And we have an ideal climate where we can ripen the grape to where it produces the floral, delicate notes, but it doesn't get too hot like it does in California, where it really burns away the delicate esters and fruit character.
Wow.
So my background as a historian was came in handy to do the research about Jefferson, and also going back to the 1619, because we've just passed the 400th anniversary of recorded history of Virginia wine.
Yes.
That goes all the way back to that point.
Wow.
So the book is called Beyond Jefferson's Vines, and the third edition this is just coming out now. 100 new wineries have come out in the 5 years since I did the second edition.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Just in Virginia, 100 new wineries in Virginia.
That's
Wow.
right, and it shows you how dynamic the industry is.
It
But
really
it's called Beyond Jefferson's Vines because it goes back to 1619, and then it comes up to the present,
Yes.
and he's kind of in the middle, on
He
that
is.
on that
Yes.
continuum. But he was kind of the visionary for fine wine as something that people could make money from.
Right.
As farmers, but also would be a healthy alternative to strong beverages, strong drink like whiskey, which was, he said, was a bane for the farmers in his day.
Wow. Well, we go back to Act 12, where we were sort of commanded to have vines in our yards so that we could produce our own wine, right?
Yeah, the Jamestown Assembly in 1619. This is when the Crown took over the Jamestown project from the Virginia Company. And they mandated in Act 12 that householders should plant at least 10 European grapevines apiece or suffer a punishment that the governor would decide. And that was because this was the very beginning of English settlement in the New World. They had a middle class with money to spend on wine, and England is a pretty cold and wet, climate much of the time.
Right.
But the traditional sources of wine from the Mediterranean, from France and from Spain, they weren't able to get them because they were at war with France and Spain, and the Turks had cut off trade from the Mediterranean. So they were looking for a native wine industry in America that could then be sent back to Britain to supply people,
Wow.
that way.
Wow.
But it took a couple hundred years for that to work.
Exactly. Well, and then we come to Jefferson. So I know that you said one of the wines that Barboursville produces, the Vermentino, is very similar to something that he would have consumed during his time. So I thought I'd pour us a little bit while we
thank you.
chat. So tell me a little bit about the wines that were available during Jefferson's era.
Okay, good question. So the first thing, and I'll refer to some notes here,
Sure.
is that before American independence, the colonists were pretty much stuck with port and Madeira.
Yes.
And these are fortified wines. And at that time, when you think of a delicate wine at 12% alcohol, to bring it across the Atlantic on a ship that was sloshing around constantly with temperature changes all the time, it wouldn't have worked. So the only thing at that point that would survive the journey would be fortified wines at around 20% alcohol. And Madeira also has its own special chemistry that makes it almost indestructible.
Yeah.
So, but Jefferson did not like drinks with high alcohol content. He also preferred the very delicate, fresh fruit flavors and balanced acidity of table wines.
Yes.
And what happened was when he became ambassador to France, he traveled around France and other neighboring countries tasting the wines, and it was an epiphany for him because he had never been able to taste delicate table wine in America.
Right.
So when he did, he said, well, this is amazing stuff, and I've got to plant some at Monticello. And what's interesting is that in the Governor's Cup competition in the last 7, 8 years, the Vermentino, I think, has placed in the governor's case more often than any other of Barboursville wines. So it just shows you how consistent the quality is for this and how much it is admired by.
It is. It's beautiful. It has a nice acidity, but a great fruit in it. Oh, it's just lovely.
It's elegant, but it has sort of a lemon peel and spice quality. Not
does.
heavy, but just enough. It's sort of a Lamborghini version of a Pinot Grigio, if you will.
Exactly.
It starts sort of light, but then it has more finesse to it.
Yes, and it has a great finish, I think.
You know, Jefferson's, what he did was an interesting custom. He had food at Monticello, and then after they had finished eating the food, he would then have the table wine as sort of a way to, cleanse the palate.